Good morning. Some fine English weather here in northwest Alabama. It's raining out. Wind's blowing a little bit off and on, to and fro. But the coffee is hot and the pipe is warm. Smoking some Elizabethan mixture. Some various Virginias with some Perique. Pretty classic vapor. Little Rossi Rubino 320. Wide open, no filter, no adapter. You don't need that crap. I mean, my wife likes the filters. And I think if you like the filter, you should smoke one with a filter. But I'm not a filter guy. I occasionally will try a 9mm filter, or we'll put one of these in, and I can't take the draw on these. The 9mm does a lot better with draw. But yeah, if I didn't want to taste it, I wouldn't smoke it, right? However, I will say the charcoal ceramic filters are pretty. If you really felt like you needed to use a filter, those aren't bad. Those aren't bad, and they do give you a dry smoke. They don't seem to monkey with the flavor too much. They might refine it a little bit, and it might be a little thinned out. But it's not my thing, but it's not bad. It's not bad, and if somebody had a bin to use one, I mean, a lot of the world does. But I think the draw is a lot better on the 9mm in the balsa or in the other one. I'm not really a great guy to ask for filter advice, but to what I've had a chance to try, which is most of the common choices, that seems to be the winning system, and it seems like most of the world has decided that's pretty much the case. I think 7 and Rossi by default does a lot of the 6mm stuff because it doesn't monkey with us non-filter smokers as bad as the 9 does, and that we can just toss the adapter and smoke it wide open, so it's not much of a hindrance. Because if you look, there's almost a little bit of a reducer in there where they just don't mill it out to the 9, but it looks like the exact same setup as their 9mm European versions. They just mill it to 6mm, so I'm not even sure the drilling and everything else isn't exactly the same, despite the slight reduction in the kind of tenon area. But they seem to smoke fine wide open. I've used the adapter, and it just seems like when you put the adapter in, there's more places for crud to hide and build up, and then you go to clean it and you think you got it clean, and then one day you pull the adapter out and you're like, oh, that was not all the way clean. And some pipes, especially the more bent ones, you've got to fight to get a pipe cleaner down through the adapter a little more than you do when it's just wide open. So that's pretty much everything I had to say about that. To quote Forrest Gump. This is not a bad pipe for a little over $50. 320. I just broke down, as many of us do, and ordered yet again from Smoking Pipes, which I have one order on the way, which is just like 3 tobaccos. And finally got some Escudo coming, and some. I was about out of Stonehenge flake, and I like that, so I've got some more of that coming. And I'm not nearly as low as I thought I was, because I'm not very low at all, but I reordered, not a lot, just a couple more ounces of Peter Stockaby's 400, the luxury Navy Flake. I like that one. It's a little heavy-handed compared to some of the other stuff I smoke now, but I liked it right off the bat, and I like that rum topping on it. It's got a little rum. Well, it's not really a little. It's got a casing on it. But it adds a nice sweetness with that rummy flavor. I like it. It's a comforting smoke and it's not expensive. And I was not really overly in love with this Elizabethan when I first tried it. I tried to be kind when I reviewed it a little because I know so many people like it. And I didn't hate it. There were qualities that I enjoyed about it. But I just found it too strong for me and a little rough. I wasn't smoking as many Virginias and Vapors at the time either. I like my Lats. I like my English blends and my Balkans. But I've gotten to where I really enjoy a Vapor. I don't mind a Virginia blend with a little bit of burley in it either. I don't mind a Vapor, where it's got a little touch of burley in with the Virginia and Perique. As long as it's not too heavy-handed, I don't mind that. That 40 Virginia that I think I said right off was a straight Virginia. And then I corrected it in the notation because I completely forgot there is a little bit of burley. There's a little bit of cube cut in there. It's very light, but it's enough to fill it out nice. And there's a little bit of something else in there. I see a little bit of a broken flake in there. Occasionally, there's not much. It's mostly leaf, but ribbon cut. That's a good smoke. The one I couldn't think of in that video was like Hollow the Wind. Hollow the Wind. I think it's all one word run together or something, but that's their little Vapor, or Vapor actually. That's out of stock. But I'd like to try that from the Rattray tobacco line. Well, here lately, man, I smoked 2 or 3 bowls of this stuff and put it to the side. And came back to it a couple days ago. And I absolutely adore this stuff. Love it. Elizabethan. I don't know if it just needed some airtime. I cracked the tin and it's just been sitting in the tin. Didn't dry out at all. I got a good, I tightened it pretty good. I got big old Irish hands, so. Viking more to the point. A lot of our tracing back our ancestry that actually came over from Ireland turns out probably weren't there terribly long from Scotland. And then when we looked further back, a lot of the people from both Scotland and Ireland weren't very far from from the Nordic countries. So, but we're mutts. We're a little bit of everything. But I'm actually we're pretty much, depending on how you look at it, 1 or 2 generations off the farm. I guess I'm the first generation completely off. My dad grew up working on his uncle's farms a lot as a kid. Bucking hay for nickel a day or something crazy like that. Uphill both ways in the snow up to your neck. But it was a lot of work, I'm sure. I visited where he grew up. He talked about before things changed a little bit, there was a little one-room schoolhouse that to hear him tell it, you're picturing Little House on the Prairie had a wood burning stove, and everybody had to bring or cut a certain amount of wood, to keep it warm. And when we visited, I'll be darned if we didn't find it. It was all falling in on itself. I stepped just barely in the doorway, but you couldn't walk around because the floor was falling in, and it looked like it wasn't far from falling completely in. But I think somebody had gotten the stove, but you could tell where it had been. And my dad's that classic American story of, he went through school, he joined the Air Force and went through school on the GI Bill and worked in some cases 2 jobs while he did that. Got his degree. And just kind of kept going. He's one of those American success stories. It just shows, if you work hard and you don't give up some people just see the success and they don't see the, 20 or 30 years of hard work that got you to that point. You didn't just get the stuff. You worked for it and you failed and you tried again, and you worked for it and you failed and you tried again. You worked for it and you had a little bit of success and several setbacks, and then you regrouped and you tried something else, and you just kept doing that and inching your way up, inching your way back down. But, that's life, man. You just got to keep going. We live in a culture that trumpets the fairy tale of the instant success story. And outside of 1 or 2% of the population, that just doesn't happen. Not everybody needs to be a rock star or a professional athlete or, world famous actor, actress, whatever. And truth be told, we don't need those people. I mean, we do need artists and we do need culture. Don't get me wrong. I'm a musician myself. I like to say I was a musician, then I got a job. But the puppy dogs are alerting me to the fact that it's time for them to take their morning constitutional to the yard. See here, my good fat man, let us out and about. I shall return. All right, the dogs are out. Who let the dogs out? This guy. That's so bad. So, success. I think another thing about success is, besides the fairy tale of the instant success, what do you want to do for life? What do you want to be in your life, kid? I want to be a millionaire and a rock star. Think of the taxes. Don't do that. But, how we define success really says a lot about who we are, both as a people and individuals. They're on the deck and they're displeased because it is rainy. We wish to cut this visit short. Now get off your butt and let us in. I'm translating for you. My chocolate lab will eventually bark one time, and she has a specific "let me in" bark. You're a dog person when your dogs have specific barks that let you know things you need to do for them. Hashtag spoiled. But I'll tell you a little bit of a story that'll tell you a little bit about how I look at it. When I was a kid, and I don't know, I was probably 12, 13, something like that. I got to go with my dad on a business trip. There was some kind of a seminar or something for his company that he needed to travel to, and it was I think we flew into LA, and we stayed at some ritzy hotel. Couldn't tell you the name of it for $100 bill, but I remember it had a pool on the roof because I was a kid, and that was like the important thing that I remember is, hey, there's a pool, and it's on the freaking roof. That's kind of cool. So you go up in the elevator, the pool's on the roof, And I remember hearing sirens and stuff going on. And I went to the edge and I looked over where you could look over and down into the park across the street. And there were police doing stuff. And I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, is it this like, you know, we grew up in the Jersey Shore suburbs. It wasn't like I'd never seen crime. So I'm like, yeah, was there a shooting? What happened? Because I know California is a big place and, LA, the LA area is not known for as Mayberry or anything. So, and they were moving out the homeless people. There were too many homeless people were camped out or whatever, and there were people with sheets and stuff walking and kind of getting corralled. You could tell, and I guess too many of the businesses were complaining about that, and so they were moving the panhandlers and all that out. I don't know where they were moving them to, but I was like, huh, that's weird. I've never seen that before. One of the few other memories I have about this trip. But one of the cool things about that trip, my dad had some uncles and cousins, and I think it was a cousin or something. Somewhere it was like the foothills of the Ozarks. So you're getting out of, California proper as far as like the LA, the city areas. And we drive out into the country for, I don't know what it was, an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. A decent drive from what I can recall. And kind of a smaller town area, little suburb. And, some nice drive. And, so we had the rental car and all that. And got to visit this little old man and his wife, and they were just nice as could be. Should be on a charm bracelet. They're just so cute and nice and old and, kind of old lady like my grandma. She's gonna bake some cookies. There is some cookie dough that's already in the freezer. If not, she's gonna make some and put cookies in before you get out of there, unless there's already a cake on the counter. That kind of old school, old timey, just good people. And we got to talking to them, and they had some good stories. And he was telling me one story about he was cleaning out his garage, and he was real old, and he had gotten cataracts really bad. $0.89 lighter working flawlessly. And he needed to clean out his garage, so he's cleaning out the garages, and he had an old car battery or boat battery or whatever it was up on the counter. And he knew he needed to move that and get those shelves cleaned out. It had been there long enough, he decided he needed to carry it to the junkyard or somewhere. And it got away from him. And he dropped it, and it blew up. I mean, it just exploded when it hit the ground, right in his face. And he runs into the house, screaming. Gets to the kitchen sink, runs water all over. He's like, it got in my eyes, it's burning my eyes. He was terrified he was going to be blind. And I said his eyes stung really bad for a day or two, but it wasn't too bad. I'm sure he wants to see somebody after that at some point. But long short of the story is, I don't know that makes any sense. Anyway, I digress. It burned the cataracts out of his eyes, and his vision was back to normal. And he said something like, wasn't it thoughtful of God to make sure I dropped that battery just the right way so that I could see good again? And I thought, this is a good old dude. He didn't have a whole lot. It was a little house, a little humble house, but it was a clean house. It was a good home. You could tell, warmth. There was a good warmth to it. There was a warmth to them. He had a cool little dog, and I remember going outside and playing with his dog for like an hour. He had a little bitty red pickup truck. It was probably like a stripped down manual, like a Nissan or a one of those little It might have been a Ford Ranger, not a full size truck, just like a little small red truck. Nothing fancy. Might have been a Datsun back then. He wasn't a real tall guy. He wasn't a man of great stature. So it probably would have fit him pretty good. I'm a full size truck kind of guy myself. Anyhow, he liked to fish and I liked to fish, and he liked his dog and I liked dogs, and he's reminded me a lot of my grandpa Stratton or my grandpa Fred. Both of them were fishermen. My mom on my dad's side had remarried later in life, and we just called him Grandpa Fred. So although one of my grandparents had deceased, male wise, on my mom's side, I still had two grandfathers because of that. And Grandpa Fred, he was like that. He's just good as gold. Good fisherman. My dad's dad was a good fisherman too. And I'm okay. I do pretty well, but it's not a major hobby for me, but I enjoy it, and always have. For like pipe smoking, just relaxing. And he's showing me his rod and reel, and he's got at the time a graphite rod and reel was the rods, that was kind of a new thing. Well, to us, because I always had Zebco 202s with fiberglass cheap rods growing up. But I had come to realize that was a thing, and I think Grandpa Fred had one. He had a bunch of like Zebco kind of stuff, but he also had one really nice one. He had finally bought himself a nice rod and reel, the open face spinning reel. And he was showing me his rod and reel. I think that's just about done finally. And we hung out for a while, and he liked his little red truck, and he liked his rod and reel, and he liked his dog, and he enjoyed our visit, and we spent some time with them, and wasn't a whole lot else I remember about that trip. I don't remember if he smoked a pipe or not. It wouldn't surprise me. He seems like the kind of guy that would have. I remember they had a little weather radio that you could hit the button on, and that was the first time I ever saw a dedicated weather radio. And I guess where they are in the foothills, you never know what the weather's going to do. So that was something they had, and I thought that's a good thing to have. I should have one of those. And that's I don't have a lot of memories of that trip, but one thing, and my dad has retold this story many times since, is we were leaving, and we have a lot of family that are more rural, like farmer type people. That's where my dad grew up, working on his uncle's farms, and I'd met some of them at one of our trips back to Illinois, and so we had some relatives that drove trucks and stuff. We had all different types of folks in the family, but most of us were blue collar working folks. And my dad was for most of his life, and that work ethic is just something it's an important part of being who we are. And so I think he wanted to know, as a kid that was raised in the suburbs, what I thought of all this. As he did the same thing when I met all the folks in Illinois, and he said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "Well." And I thought about it for a second and shook my head. And I said, "I'll tell you what, he seems like a nice guy. He's got a good wife, a good pickup truck, a good rod and reel, and a really good dog. I reckon he's got about everything, Dad. He's got it made," or something like that. And that just, to my dad, to hear that's how I decided that this guy had it all, was, he had a good truck, he had a good wife, he had a good home, he had a good puppy dog, and he had a real nice rod and reel. And so I figured he must be doing okay. And but it was more than that. I didn't know how to put it into words as a kid, but just that you could tell he was a guy that was content and happy with not just what he had in life, but who he was and where he was at, and in the bigger picture kind of thing. And I didn't know how to put that into words, but that was my fast assessment. Was He's got a good rod and reel, a good truck, and a good dog. I guess he's got it all, and so he likes to. My dad likes to retell that tale every once in a while because there have been a lot of times in my life where I had choices where I could have done different things, and I didn't always take the most obvious road. Where if we were just looking at the bottom line and what most of the world calls success, I took the less obvious road, but I wasn't looking for that stuff. So with that, I'll just say that hope everybody has a blessed day, and may your road lead to true success and happiness. The U.S. Piper out.